Bernie Sanders' campaign event in Massachusetts for a Ted Cruz chat with reporters regarding a big controversy that erupted over a campaign ad attacking Marco Rubio and his stand on the Bible.
People all uniting behind this campaign. At this point here in Nevada, it's entirely about turnout. And so we are encouraging every man and woman in this state, if you are fed up with Washington deal-making, if you're fed up with politicians that go to Washington, that break their word, that cut deals with the Democrats to grow and grow and grow government, to hammer small businesses and to take away our constitutional freedoms, then I encourage you to unite with our campaign, a proven, consistent conservative. I think the men and women in Nevada want someone who's been the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, someone who is a fiscal conservative, a social conservative, a national security conservative, someone who has devoted his entire adult life to defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing on the ground, and today it's all about turnout.
Senator, can you address... ahead to Nevada, but if you look at the last couple of states, South Carolina, New Hampshire, I don't need to tell you Donald Trump won. There's a lot of questions now specifically today about whether he is unstoppable. So how do you stop Donald Trump? History's on his side.
Well, you know, the first three states, historically, the role they played is narrowing the field. We started out with 17 Republican candidates. We're now down to 3 candidates that are viable. And if you look historically, no candidate has ever won the nomination without winning one of the first 3 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. There are only 2 of us.
The first 2 have never lost the nomination.
There are only 2 of us who have won a state so far, me and Donald Trump. And I think what we're seeing, look, Donald Trump is a candidate unlike any we've ever seen before. He has a passionate, committed base of supporters, but he's got a ceiling where between 60 and 70% of Republican primary voters recognize that Donald is not the best candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton. The polling shows Donald head-to-head with Hillary Clinton consistently loses. Head-to-head with Hillary, I beat her. And one of the clear outcomes from Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina is that I'm the only candidate who can beat Donald Trump. It's one of the reasons why we're seeing conservatives coalescing behind our campaign, because if you don't think Donald Trump is the right candidate for Republicans to be running with in November, the only campaign who has beaten Donald Trump and the only campaign that has a path to beating Donald Trump is our campaign.
You're a realist. You may not like some things you hear. I'm sure you're not happy that Trump's winning all these things. At the same time, is it possible, plausible to say that he may not be, and we won't know this for a while, but is it possible to say at this point he may not be beatable?
I believe that Donald Trump will not be our nominee. But the only way to beat him is for conservatives to unite behind our campaign. If other candidates devote all of their time and energy to attacking us, to engaging in personal slurs and attacks, it is possible they could weaken us to a sufficient extent that they hand Donald Trump the nomination. That is a possibility. I hope that it doesn't happen, and the reason I hope it doesn't happen is for this country. I don't think we can afford to gamble. Listen, the reason all of us are investing so much time and energy is that our country hangs in the balance. We're bankrupting this nation. The national debt has gone from $10 trillion to $19 trillion. And I want to speak to all the men and women in Nevada who are facing economic stagnation, who are struggling to find a job, who've seen their hours forcibly reduced to 28, 29 hours a week because of Obamacare, who've seen their wages stagnate, who are seeing illegal immigration pushing down wage levels. There is a better way. Listen, the Obama-Clinton economy is not the new normal. Young people who are coming out of school who've got student loans that are strangling them, who are afraid, am I going to have a better future? This is not the new normal. There is a better way. But the only way to turn it around is to get back to the free market principles that built this country in the first place. The only way to turn it around is to lessen the burden of Washington on small businesses, tax reform and regulatory reform. As president, I will repeal every word of Obamacare. As president, I will champion a simple flat tax where we abolish the IRS. And we do those 2 things. You will see small businesses, you will see small businesses exploding. You will see jobs exploding. You will see wages rising. And that's what this campaign is about, is bringing back economic opportunity for those who are struggling.
Sarah, did you meet with Marco Rubio here in Nevada, Sarah?
Is that actually true? Can you confirm?
His day, he is not letting a single 24-hour period pass without suggesting that your campaign has been guilty of dirty tricks, sharp elbows, lies, and what he called he's accused you of essentially of deceiving the voters. What do you say to Marco Rubio?
You know, I think it has been an unfortunate dynamic in this race that my two leading competitors, Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, don't want to defend their records. And whenever anyone brings up their record, they both follow the same pattern. They scream, liar, 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 rather than discuss substance. So, for example, at the last debate in South Carolina, when I pointed out Donald Trump's passionate support for Planned Parenthood, he responded by bellowing, liar.
So, Senator, when Mr. Rubio says somebody should be held accountable and should be fired, insofar as your communications director admitted a mistake today, will some sort of disciplinary action take place to correct these things, or is that the way you expect the campaign to continue?
So, Carl, let me finish answering the question. Donald Trump, when you point to his actual record, screams liar because he cannot defend his record because it's inconsistent with how he's campaigning, what he's telling the voters. Likewise, Marco Rubio, you look at that last debate. I made 3 substantive points about him. Number 1, I pointed out that he currently supports granting citizenship to the 12 million people who are here illegally. That is a fact. That is his position. He said it on the debate stage just a few debates earlier. He said it with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. His response was simply to say liar. Likewise, I pointed out his record in Florida was that he supported in-state tuition for illegal aliens. That is a fact of his legislative record. And the third thing I said substantively is that he went on Univision in Spanish, and he promised that he would not rescind President Obama's illegal executive actions on the first day in office. Now, that is a fact as well. That was on national television. The record is there. And Marco's response, echoing Donald Trump, was simply to say liar and throw out that I couldn't speak Spanish anyway, so how did I know what was on Univision?
Did you meet with him?
Now that particular statement was incorrect, as was demonstrated at that debate. And there is a reason campaigns make a decision to engage in personal attacks. I will point out that both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio's campaign have also relied on fabrications, utter fabrications. So Donald Trump tweeted out a supposed quote from Senator Tom Coburn, impugning my honesty. Within hours, Senator Coburn said publicly that the tweet that Donald Trump sent out, the quote, was an utter fabrication. Rubio likewise made multiple charges of wrongful conduct for which he had no evidence and which we had nothing to do about. Now, Carl, you asked specifically about the tweet. Yesterday, a staffer from our campaign sent out a tweet that tweeted a news story that purported to indicate Marco saying something negative about the Bible. The news story was false. That staffer deleted the tweet, apologized, and pulled it down, although I've spent this morning investigating what happened. And this morning, I asked for Rick Tyler's resignation. I had made clear in this campaign that we will conduct this campaign with the very highest standards of integrity. That has been how we've conducted it from day one. It is why when other campaigns attack us personally, impugn my integrity or my character, I don't respond in kind. None of you have heard me throw the kind of insults at Marco Rubio that he throws at me every single day. If other candidates choose to go into the gutter, we will not do the same. Rick Tyler's a good man. This was a grave error of judgment. It turned out the news story he sent around was false, but I'll tell you, even if it was true, we are not a campaign that is going to question the faith of another candidate. Even if it was true, our campaign should not have sent it. That's why I've asked for Rick Tyler's resignation, because the standards of conduct in this campaign have been made absolutely clear for every member of the campaign. And listen, I understand that Marco's campaign team believes it's politically advantageous to try to distract the topic from his own record. And they have a long record they've earned in South Carolina of engaging in this kind of trickery and impugning the integrity of whoever their opponent is to distract the attention. We are going to stay focused on issues and substance and record. because I think that's what the American people want. I think that's what they deserve. And that's what they're going to get. This campaign is about turning this country around, bringing back jobs and economic growth, and protecting the constitutional rights of each and every American. No.
No, you did not.
It's a
You
false
did not.
one.
Did you speak with him at all?
No.
Is there any plausible path to the nomination, Senator, without Texas?
A big lead up in the news conference here to what was the big headline coming out of it, that Ted Cruz has asked his communications director, Rick Tyler, to resign over the consequences of something that Rick Tyler posted on his Facebook page and had retweeted. Let me show you the video. It was video that the Cruz communications director said showed Marco Rubio saying something negative about the Bible. And Marco Rubio came out and said, what I said was that all the answers this young man would ever need are found in the Bible. And I demand answers. What the campaign put out was false. I want this to be accurate and fair, and I don't think this is fair. And it's one thing that Rick Tyler has apologized, but how will there be consequences? Where will there be consequences? Rick Tyler had said that he had received a news story showing the video of Senator Rubio walking past a Ted Cruz staffer. The story misquoted a remark that the senator made to a staffer, and I assumed wrongly, he says, that the story was correct. And then he pulled down his tweet and took it off, and we just showed the accurate version of that video. But again, it was used in this campaign forum to misguide people, potential supporters, about Marco Rubio and his support or lack thereof of the Bible. So let's go to Steve Chaggaris, who is CBS News political editor. Steve, it's interesting. When we heard from Marco Rubio first, he said, I accept the apology, but I don't accept that these kinds of things can keep happening without there being consequences. And it turns out, in this case, it looks like there was.
Well, what's interesting is Ben Carson has been asking for weeks now for some sort of reaction to what happened in Iowa involving him and tweets that went out suggesting that he was getting out of the race and that people should go vote for Ted Cruz in Iowa. And nothing really happened in that instance. I think what we're seeing here is, one, a reaction to the fact that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz are locked in a real battle to be the alternative to Donald Trump. And secondly, that there's this real storyline that's out there that Ted Cruz plays by a different set of rules than everybody else. And this is, I think, Cruz's actions here are really to try to reset that storyline.
Well, look, maybe in years to come, we'll look back on this particular campaign era and the title will be Lies and the Lying Liars Who Told Them. But the case remains that today the storyline is about Ted Cruz's campaign, the fact that a communications director has been asked to resign. And what you heard from Ted Cruz leading up to, oh yeah, and by the way, I've asked Rick Tyler to resign, was, yeah, but Donald Trump lies. He lies all the time. And yeah, Marco Rubio, he lied. And whatever happened to that? So there was a lot of finger pointing leading up to there being consequences within the Cruz campaign.
Sure. I mean, that's really been sort of the theme over the last couple of weeks, is everybody's pointing to each other as not being truthful and really throwing the word lie around, which, it doesn't really seem to we don't ever seem to get to the point of the word lie get thrown around as loosely as it has been in the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, the question here is what are Republican voters looking for? Do they care that these people are not being so truthful? Do they care that Ted Cruz is using, quote, dirty tricks, as some have alleged that he's doing? Or is there a bigger issue here? And I don't know. I look at what's happening today with Rick Tyler, and I'm just a little dubious that anything that's happening here is going to affect one vote in the states that are coming up to, whether it's Nevada tomorrow or Super Tuesday next week.
Well, what about the argument that Ted Cruz made, and we just heard it there? He says, look, there is a way to stop Donald Trump. It's if all the conservatives rally around my campaign. And yes, if these other candidates keep attacking my campaign, maybe they will weaken my candidacy to the point that they hand Donald Trump the nomination. So it's about everyone else rallying around Ted Cruz and not about the potential of should he and his campaign and his supporters rally around another candidate.
I mean, that's been his strategy, though, from the beginning, is to consolidate all different factions of the conservative wing of the Republican Party, whether it's the Tea Partiers, Libertarians, conservatives. I mean, Rick Tyler told us that last year when they were setting up the Ted Cruz campaign. The reality is he hasn't been able to consolidate that support. If you look at what happened in Iowa, yes, he was able to get a majority of evangelicals, not a majority, but a plurality of evangelicals and conservatives, but he hasn't been able to repeat that. And in a state like South Carolina, which is really tailor-made for somebody like Ted Cruz, very conservative, very evangelical, he lost evangelicals to Trump. So yes, of course he's going to go out there and say, consolidate around me, I'm the true, pure conservative. But it seems as if voters right now don't buy it, and you know, whatever reason it is, whether it's because he's a member of the Senate and you know, they feel that he hasn't done enough to get things done in Washington, or they're really buying into the idea of Donald Trump as being a real change agent and as somebody who can go and shake things up. You know, he's behind the eight ball, as is Rubio, to be honest with you. I mean, Trump comes out of these contests, these New Hampshire and South Carolina contests, with real momentum. And so Cruz right now is scrambling to try to solidify what should be his base, which he hasn't been able to do coming out of South Carolina.
And we're showing the tweet from Donald Trump, the reaction to this video that had surfaced, and again, was characterized by the Cruz campaign as being that Marco Rubio said something negative about the Bible. And you could see, wow, Ted Cruz falsely suggested Marco Rubio mocked the Bible and was just forced to fire his communications director. More dirty tricks. The thing is, when you're hearing it from Donald Trump on one end of the spectrum and Marco Rubio on the other end of the spectrum, and then Ted Cruz asks his communications director to resign, doesn't it suggest to voters there's something to that? And especially when you're trying to be the stand-up Christian candidate that appeals to these evangelical voters, isn't that going to be troubling to especially that segment of the population?
I mean, we don't have any real evidence to suggest that all of this is resonating with voters yet. And so it's hard to really go out on a limb and say that. But there's no question that the storyline has been set by Trump first and then by Rubio that Cruz is not truthful. And that's not really, that's a pretty negative thing to say about somebody, calling them a liar. And if the concern on Cruz's part is that he's been tarred a liar, whether there's evidence or not to suggest that voters are reacting to that, it's still something you don't want to be labeled. And so,
yeah.
You know, when your main competitor, and right now I think his main competitor is Rubio, has come out and demanded accountability, this is one way to do it, you know, is to fire somebody. And so now you can say, okay, somebody on my staff did something sinister and I'm getting rid of them. I'm a stand-up guy, look at me.
Hey, in the bigger scheme of things, how important is a communications director to a campaign?
I mean, in the case of Cruz, I can tell you he has a lot of people in his communications shop, so I'm not sure one voice is going to really alter that whole scenario, but at the same time, you know, I don't know, I'm not in their day-to-day working meetings or whatever, so I'm not sure how valuable somebody like Rick Tyler is compared to some of the other people they have on their staff. I do know they have several senior level communications folks working on the Cruz campaign, so my sense is they probably, and I don't want to denigrate Rick Tyler, but they could probably live without him for the next few weeks.
The other thing is, on Rick Tyler's Facebook page, where he posted the apology for misusing that video, the responses start out, you know, you're a stand-up guy, Rick Tyler. You are a man of integrity, Rick. Could this actually give Ted Cruz, and, you know, not that it really matters now, but could it give his campaign a little bit of a boost in terms of, hey, we followed it up, we did the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think this is going to move any voters to or away from Ted Cruz, but I think what it does is it definitely solidifies the people who support Ted Cruz. It is an honorable move to fire somebody from your staff after that person did something dishonest, or at least somebody accused him of doing something dishonest. So yeah, sure, if people who are supporting Cruz come out and say, that's, you know, a very honorable thing you did, Senator Cruz, great, thank you for doing that. I mean, that's, I think, what he's trying to do here, again, trying to stop the bleeding a bit. I mean, you've had weeks and weeks of this criticism from Trump and now Rubio, calling him a liar, so, you know, doing something honorable in this situation, it can't hurt him, at least among his supporters.
But as you point out, that for Ben Carson in Iowa, suggesting that you have suspended your campaign and suggesting that the supporters don't go caucus for you, but instead caucus for Ted Cruz, who knows? But that could have had a real impact and real consequences for the way things shook out in Iowa. We'll continue to watch that. But again, the big news that we're following today, Steve, is that Ted Cruz has asked for the resignation of his communications director following the controversy over video that falsely suggested that Marco Rubio had mocked the Bible, and Marco Rubio was very clear that that was not at all the case.